Floods ravage the northeast of India, but the Indian media is obsessed with horse trading of politicians in a northern Indian state of Rajasthan. Many in the northeast complain of a second-class treatment by quote-unquote mainland India. Join me, Rohit.
Good evening, and ladies and gentlemen, today we'll be discussing, and our focus today in our show, It Matters. So, what we've been seeing in the last few days, literally 33 million people have been impacted and displaced by these floods. Now, this is a yearly phenomena. Every single year, flooding happens and its tributaries overflow. And because of soil erosion, a lot of people get impacted. People are displaced, lives get shattered, and it happens year on and year after year. Not enough action is taken before, and again, things unfold, and we are again seen, battling with the overflooding. Now, this Brahmaputra is a river which comes all the way from China. It's called Sangpo there, and it's called Brahmaputra in India. And its tributaries are constantly, every single year, every single monsoon, create havoc in the lives of people. There's a lot of mismanagement in this as well. India has dams on its side as well. Obviously, they have to open the floodgates when they reaches the mark of danger. And similarly, the dams up on the China side, the same thing happens. So really, we have to begin battling this when the rest of the year is around, and we have to begin building, embankments so that this flooding does not destroy people's lives. But today we are here to discuss a very different thing. We're here to discuss how the Northeast gets completely ignored, and that is one of our concerns with this show today. Is that the rest of the media today is not looking at this massive destruction that's taking place, but the media is concentrating on some horse trading in Rajasthan, where there is a possibility of the government falling, and that is something that bothers the people in the Northeast. People are saying, does this matter to you more than our lives and what needs to be done? If your media is not concentrating on us, are we part of even mainland India? And that's something the people in the Northeast have said for a while. Either when it comes to China's challenges to India, that's when people begin looking at the Northeast, or when issues like disasters happen. But this year, even the disaster is not turning the media's attention towards the Northeast. Maybe a couple of outlets are working on it, but other than that, the media pretty much blacks out one small headline somewhere on a paper, and that's the end of it. So I think first, let's go to Pranav. He's in Kaziranga today. Now, Kaziranga is greatly impacted. A lot of the wildlife is impacted as well, and so are the villagers. So let's go to Pranav. He's in Kaziranga, sitting in a village where there is a lot of water. Pranav, tell me, what's the situation there where you are?
Thank you, and thanks for having me in this program today. And I'm happy by the fact that I'll be able to tell you about the problems that's plaguing us in the Northeast, as in the state of Assam in India. Right now, like you said, I'm seated in my own ancestral village, and I would like to show you the condition of where we are seated right now. So this is the condition. You can see water just below where I am sitting. So it's a traditional missing tribal house where I am seated, because I belong to that community, and we are a riverine scheduled tribe community from Assam. Now, what is happening, like every year, even this year, there are millions of people that are directly affected by the floods. And this is the second bout of floods in less than a month. So the trend of floods that we are used to seeing, as people in the river valley, as people from the valleys of Luit, which is the other name of Brahmaputra, which is a more traditional name, Luit. Brahmaputra is known as Luit here. And we are not used to seeing such erratic floods in this region, but because of different reasons, because of the interest of the center in building dams all over the place, because of blocked water, because of those dams release times when people are not ready for the floods, just because they can't hold enough water, they say. So we have to face this kind of floods, and this is increasing year after year, and the toll on the people is also increasing. So right now what is happening in Kaziranga, this region, which Kaziranga, the forest world heritage site, we know that 99% of the forest area of the 1,000 square kilometer which comprises, it's completely underwater. And I am seated right on the eastern fringe of the national park. So what has happened is here, yeah, sorry.
And honestly, if the rest of the people are watching this show, it is shameful that 80-90% of your television and your broadcast and your print time is devoted to an issue which is a non-issue. Here, such a large population, 33 million people displaced in your country, and your eyes are not at one of the most important things, the pressing things at the moment. Obviously, COVID is important. We understand coronavirus is certainly, impacting humanity. But beyond that, here is an emergency where people are going to die, people homes are getting destroyed. Does that make you angry, Pranab? I want to ask you this quick question, and then I'm going to bring in Chandrani, because she's going to discuss and tell us a bit about this whole damming project and how climate change gets impacted.
Definitely, like, we are angry to a point that we have a strong resentment against this kind of treatment that is meted out to us year after year. Till date, we have been crying and demanding from Assam year after year, generations after generation, that the problem of the annual floods that we face needs to be counted or needs to be recognized as a national disaster, so that it comes into the national framework or the national imagination of the larger India which they talk about. And this very fact that they have not recognized the disasters in Assam, the floods mainly, as as a national problem in itself proves the stepmotherly outlook that the center, the Indian nation has towards the northeastern part of this country. And if they can think of our oil, think of the tea, think of the rhinoceros, think of the coal and the resources that we have as national property, why can't they think about the problem, the disaster, the floods that kills hundreds of us every year, that takes away thousands of acres of our arable land every year, that puts silt and transform land into non-agricultural land every year? Why are those situations not considered to be important enough? It's not a question of 1-2%, it's a question of millions of people. Yeah.
Stay with us. Stay with us. Don't go away. I'm going to come back to you. So stay with us. Chandrani Sinha is based in Guwahati. She's a journalist who's worked with me for the last many years, but she now specializes, her genre is climate change. Chandrani, tell us a bit about how large this challenge is and what needs to be done to fix it.
So this is not a new challenge for Assam. So it's been almost a decade Assam is facing flood. So it all happened since 1950, when there was a big earthquake in this valley, like Indo-Tibetan region, and Assam was very badly hit. After that, the course of the river it changed, and there was a very huge effect on the tectonic plates of the river. So every year, since then, the erosion and the damage every year, every year Assam faces flood, and we have seen the damage in front of our eyes. This year also, more 4 lakh people have been affected, and 32,000, more than 32,000 people have been displaced. So every year we talk about embankment. Every year we talk about the flood, the impacts of flood. but nobody talks about how to solve this issue, how to solve go with the problem before the flood. So there is a huge crisis of and mismanagement in the government. So we talk about
So,
flood during the
what
flood
needs to
and
be
not
done?
before it.
What needs to be done to fix
Uh,
it? Can you please shed light on that?
70% of the embankments what we see now are they have lived their age. They're more than 50, 70, 100 years old. The only thing the government do is that try to uh, try to repair it a bit before the flood. But the issue is that why we don't see new embankments? Like why don't we see new things happening in the bank of the river? Why can't we see a proper study on the river, a proper study on the climatic effect of the river? The rainfall, the scarcity of rainfall and the sudden rainfall, erratic rainfall I'm talking during monsoon is one of the major cause of this flood, this kind of flood. Overnight, houses, rivers, like the villages have been washed out. So this is not one day effect. If we study it, like it's a decade destruction going on in this river. So the government has to do a proper study on the river. Then only the flood
Sure.
can be controlled.
Sure. So let me give a little perspective on this. I did two films in 2007 and 8, and it was on Bangladesh and living with water. Now the films were essentially about talking about how climate change is impacting it. When the glaciers melt, the rivers obviously overflow. Along with it, the rain comes, and then all of this comes down to communities which have to deal with this water. So a lot of these communities get submerged, and we have to kind of take responsibility as the rest of the world, because a lot of the climate change is happening because a lot of us are consuming heavy energy. It's impacting the ozone layer. The ozone layer then sends down, a much harsher sunlight down to the earth, and that's how the glaciers melt. So we together have to take charge and say, if the water here is going to rise and this is where people need to live, then how do we protect these communities by making larger embankments, whatever we need to do with gunny bags, many other countries of the world. For example, if you look at Holland, they have obviously increased the size of their embankment so the water doesn't overflood these communities. And I think uh, nations have to take responsibility for its people, where people live. And I think this is one of the big issues. It has to be solved, not an easy one. Chandrani, stay with us. I'm going to see if Anupam has joined us. He's made a film on the issue along with some of his friends, including Wensi. If he's joined us, I would like to talk a bit about what he discovered through the film, and then we will have others. If Anupam has joined us, bring him in. Otherwise, we will bring in the other guests into the show. So I don't think Anupam has joined us. I'm bringing in two more people into the show. One is Reena Nurung. Reena is from Arunachal Pradesh. She's a voice of the Northeast and a very prominent voice of the Northeast. And Leher Sethi. Leher Sethi is a is an activist in the city of Delhi. She kind of works on issues, and one of her tweets today, this morning, was, "Why the hell are we ignoring the Northeast and Kaziranga?" And so I'm going to bring them both in. Reena, first to you. Tell me, what do you feel on the perspective of the media and when it comes to Northeast? You've certainly voiced your opinion a tremendous amount of times.
Yeah, thank you, Rohit. Thank you for having me. Um, uh, it's uncanny every time this is a culture that has been portrayed by the mainstream media. Um, any political game, any political gimmick in the North India is far more important as seen as a matter of severity than human lives and losses in the Northeast. I mean, I've always been vocal about the humanitarian crisis in the region and not getting enough attention from the mainstream media. You've covered my father's story since 2017. I've been crying and pleading to the nation and the media about my father's death, murder, and not having received enough attention, as well as 160 plus murders in Arunachal and um yeah.
And I hear you, Neer. So what Reena's,
Yeah.
Reena's been obviously been fighting this whole chaos in Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal
Yeah,
has been a hub of political murders, including her
yeah,
father, who was a prominent, political figure. And what she kept telling me again and again, I was in Arunachal and I went over there, and she kept saying that when it comes down to a story of the Northeast, it's treated like a stepchild. It's not given
yeah,
its due, and that is the point I think she's trying to make here again today. Reena, continue,
yeah,
please tell me.
yeah. Um, coming outside Arunachal, I mean, look at Assam. In the last, it's been over a month that there has been um, an oil crisis in Tinsukia. There's a fire in the oil well, but I don't think many of the mainstream media has even covered it. And the oil well, it has an adverse effect on the people there. It has affected the tea estate. People have not been able to get jobs. They're displaced. In the same time, with the Assam floods, uh, we tend to forget that over 36 lakh people are displaced today, and here we are talking about Bollywood and politics as if these are matters that even need attention. I've always felt this utmost political betrayal, if I may say, from the center towards the region, and that is something that I will always condemn. Second point that I would like to make is the northeastern region suddenly becomes utmost importance when there is China involved. There is a strategic interest that needs to be taken care of. Secondly, only at a time when corporates and private companies want to extract resources from the northeastern region. I think it is only then the northeastern state suddenly is of utmost importance, and that is the outlook that we don't like. A lot of us, researchers, writers, and activists have been openly talking about this, that Northeast cannot just be seen as this hub of oil and natural resources.
Sources, and
And
it needs to be
if
integral part of India, and the mistreatment
exactly,
of people
exactly,
in the northeastern India is certainly another very big issue.
yeah,
Reena, let me come right back
yeah,
to you, but in the meanwhile, can you mute Pranav's microphone because that's interfering with the audio? Leher,
yeah.
you put out a tweet today, and you talked about how Kaziranga is drowning and the rest of the media is not even taking a serious look at it. Tell me what made you write that tweet.
So, to begin with, Rohit, thank you for having me here today because I feel that this is of utmost importance. I am really disappointed and sort of hurt by the stepmotherly treatment, like they rightly said, given and meted out to the people from the Northeast, especially Assam, when we know the kind of devastation that is going on out there. Now, I have a particular connection with Kaziranga because I come from an army background and my father was in the 1st Assam Regiment. And we used to have this regimental song that I was very fond of. Kaziranga will shine tonight. So it used to go like Kaziranga will shine tonight, Kaziranga will shine. When the sun goes down, when the moon comes up, Kaziranga will shine. Anyway, it's a childhood memory that I grew up with, and it was something that would always bring about a lot of um, memories, good memories, nostalgia for me. And to see that that same Kaziranga today, as per the authorities, they have said that 90% of it is submerged. There have been deaths of many, animals as per them, as per the official figures. We don't even know what the unofficial figures might be. And then there have been about 92 deaths from what I was reading in the morning in the wire. As per the latest report, they said that, there has also been because of the excessive rains. There's been some sort of an avalanche which has killed another 26 people. And what is really shocking is that nobody's talking about it. I don't see it anywhere. Today was the first day that I saw, I think Times of India gave a headline. Otherwise, there are not, it's probably on page 10, or you have to really search for information on what is going on in Assam, which is very wrong. I feel, even though I live in North India. And the funny thing is, this I'm telling you out of experience, Rohit, that most people living in the north of India would be unaware. They wouldn't even know what are the 6 states that make up the Northeast. And I'm telling you this because I did a corporate training for a while. I worked in a corporate as a trainer, and this was one of the questions that I used to ask my students. And most of them had no idea. They did not know. And even now, if you go out on the street and you were to talk to somebody walking on the street, they would probably not be able to tell you. So,
You're right. You're absolutely
I
right.
mean,
And I think there is a bit of a failure. And if I'm being kind when I say a bit of a failure, it's a large failure. Let's go back to Pranav, who's on the ground in Kaziranga today. Let's get a little more perspective. If you can open Pranav's mic. Pranav,
Yeah,
explain to
yeah.
me
Hi.
the people there in the village. What are they expecting? What needs to happen right away?
I mean, the situation right now is very grim here, and people will accrue huge losses because of this flood. It's the second time, like I said, in less than a month. And the River Valley people, it's an annual phenomena where like people work hard throughout the year, they save whatever little they can, and then it's like people have to wait just for this few days or the months of the floods where everything is washed away again. So it's like again starting from zero every year, and this is a very serious problem. Somehow we also say that this is a design which the government is following to keep the people in a state of penury as a permanent state. Like they are not allowed to think beyond their day-to-day needs, and you see on a day-to-day basis there is also different forms of dispossession that people are facing. Can you hear me?
I can very much hear
Hi.
you, and your
Yeah.
picture is frozen. So I can come back to you if you can disconnect and reconnect again. But I totally hear you, and I understand the point you're making here. It's a very, very important point. You're making a direct
So
accusation is that the situation is being kept so that people continue to live in this existence, and they continue
yeah.
to, basically rely on the government for
So here,
everything, and there is no other way out.
Ronit, here, yeah, here I would like to bring in one point. So here it's like everyone has to be dependent on the relief, and so it's gradually engineering people into a mentality that they are completely dependent on relief, which we see the government doing very actively, be it through the PM's funds or whatever, like putting in direct cash benefits, and at the end of the day they just want us to be
Sure.
dependent
I'm
on them.
with you, Pranav. Pranav, I'd like to
Yeah,
see a little more video from your end. So why don't you disconnect this line and dial back in? In the meanwhile, let me
yeah,
bring in Chandrani for a bit.
sure,
Chandrani,
sure, yeah.
tell me, in your work on climate change, what is that you see that you need to change right away? Is there some tangible moves that can be made right away, and then long term, what needs to happen?
So I've worked uh, for a subject called as climate refugees of Assam. And what I have seen is that I think in India, Assam will have one of the most highest number of climate refugees, and mostly in the lower downstream of Brahmaputra. And I did a story for Vice last year. So it was like how climate refugees are related with NRC. So the identity crisis been like happening due to climate refuge and the displacement and everything, like the effects of the river basically. So I
So
what
what you're
what
trying
point
to
I'd
say,
like.
what you're saying is that there is a direct correlation between climate refugees and people who will get thrown out because of the NRC.
Yes.
Okay, and they may still be Assamese, but because of their climate refugees, they have no paperwork, they have no homes where they were originally, so they will actually be coined
Right,
and people
right.
say
It
that he's
becomes
no
quite
longer there.
difficult for them to prove their identity because their papers, everything, the important documents are being washed away due to displacement because of the river and the floods. for a
Okay.
very long course of time.
It is
So
a
now
very
the
important point that you're making.
yeah. So now the thing is that just now we spoke about the embankments and how to tame the river. So taming the river is a very difficult thing. What I think is Brahmaputra is not a small river; it's a very huge river. It came from Tibet. The name of the glacier is Chemayung Dang. So from there, it takes the name of Sangpo and then Siang. A lot of dams are also being built in like Siang Valley. The Dibang project is there, and the Subansiri project was also commissioned. So a lot of projects are like going on. Dams are like on the river. But the thing is that in 2018, 16 million uh, was been sanctioned to tame the river and to create solid embankments, and that this loan amount was been sanctioned by ADB, Asian Development Bank.
Yeah.
So it was a project which is like uh, was one of the $150 million project in India. So the thing is that where did the money go? If it is not related, everything is not related with each other, where did the money go? We didn't saw any embankments been reconstructed in Assam, anything like any thing happening in the bank of river Brahmaputra, which is like 5,000 kilometers area. So we didn't see anything, in fact. So but when the flood comes, we talk about the relief. Yeah, one important thing is that during this time, the COVID is also one of the reason why relief is not been like properly put in places which are flood inducted. So the people, they are
There
not,
are
they
two or
don't
three
want to come
points
to
you've
the
made. Let me round that off. One of the things, obviously, is the ADB fund that came in for building embankments. An ADB Government of India joint partnership in building these dams. Obviously, ADB is just a bank; it gives out money on
yes,
loan to the Government of India, and it's a loan with very little percentage, but it's a bank, and they're supposed to
right,
have checks and balances. That's why they give money much cheaper than the other banks. But at the end of the day, they're a bank, they're a development bank. But please remember, any of these organizations, including the Government of India, certainly a part of the whole corruption racket of taking this money and it just siphoning it off. So certainly, you make a very good point. COVID relief, because of COVID, a lot of officials are not been coming out, and literally this is being, so what's happening this year is much worse than many other years because there aren't as many people out there fighting the flood, even on a local level. Forget, Government of India getting involved through the disaster management group. So I think very good points. I'm going to be going for closing in the show. Let me bring in Reena to close the show on terms of what is the kind of tangible change they're looking for. Reena, from your perspective and closing statements, what is that from as a person from the Northeast? You've been an active politician, you've been an active student politician. Tell us, what is the one change you would like to see from the Government of India and obviously the media as we are discussing it today?
Yeah, thank you, Rohit. I think that's a wonderful question to conclude the show with. Uh, Let me put back this question to the viewers and hopefully to those who can later on watch this video, that what will it take for India to recognize the issues of the Northeast as important as it considers the rest of India's issues? Why is it that any issues in the Northeast will have only two-line stories, probably in the seventh or the eighth page of the newspaper, or not, or none at all, So that is my question. The second is, I think we all need to understand and acknowledge that how diverse the region is, and how there are complicated issues in the region, and um, floods that happens in Assam is a recurring problem, and it needs to be recognized as a national disaster or a national problem. Until and unless we do that, it is almost like wishing that the same problem keeps happening every year, and then people live on the margin, on the periphery with relief and with donations. That's not the life that I think any citizen deserves. It's a free democratic country, and everybody deserves to live with dignity and respect that. And secondly, the other point that I would like to make is the same point that I put up in the beginning is northeastern region cannot be seen only from a corporate point of view of extracting resources. The Indian state has to recognize that its 8 states are an integral part of the country which needs love and attention and respect. If we still haven't learned this in the last 70 years, I'm afraid we are taking a lot of time, and I think the government and the leadership forgets that resentments are boiling and it is not good. And I think if you want to make, if we envision a country, or we envision an India which is not just big in terms of its GDP, but actually it is a developing nation. It has to take everyone together, and that is my
Sure.
message.
Very, very
for
good
the
point.
region. Yeah.
Leher, closing statements from you on this whole show. I actually, the slide came up. The students of JNU have put together a group, and they are actually
Yes.
trying to raise money to make sure that they can work on this situation, both the COVID and in the floods. So this is something the Northeast Students Forum has put up, and Reena had asked us to share this, and we are sharing it with you. If anybody is interested, they may reach out to Reena directly and to the Students' Union. Leher, closing statements from you.
Yeah, so Rohit, I think Reena spoke very well, and she pretty much put across what I feel as well. I feel that we cannot treat the citizens of a country, of a democratic country, differently based on what area of the country they belong to. And for sure, the Northeast has been ignored for too long. I think it is time that we recognize that they are as much a part of India as any other state in the North is, and we need to make them feel that way, because unless we do that, there is going to be resentment in those people, and rightly so. It is not coming from nowhere, that resentment or the feelings that they are having. And at a time like this, of course, we need to step up and to support them, but the government needs to work on solutions for the longer term, for the longer run, because we cannot live like this. I'm sure those people cannot survive this way every year, being ravaged by floods and other natural disasters, and continuing to live that way. So there has to be a solution for the long run, a permanent solution that needs to be reached.
Bring in Anupam. He's coming late into the show, but before I go to Chandrani and before I go to Pranav in Kaziranga village, I will bring in Anupam. Anupam, you made a documentary around this. Tell me, what was the pressing need you thought that you needed to make a documentary around this? And also, please roll some of the video from his documentary.
Thanks, Rohit, for including our documentary in your show. The thing that I was reporting for Down to Earth in New Delhi, and then I moved my base to Guwahati. And one of the first things that we did, was to come back to Kaziranga and find stories related to floods, the embankments, and how people have been continuously displaced over the last 20 or 30 years from these areas. So during this process, last 3 years, a lot of learnings happened. One of the first things that we kind of we realized is that a lot of these flood reporting or whatever, like people writing the stories about flood, it's only around the monsoon months. People don't really write any stories about the work that is going on in these embankments during, say, the dry season. That is
Does
when
anything
these
Anupam, does anything
nothing,
happen?
no, but
Nothing
this work goes on. No, this work goes on during the dry season. That is when you get to check that is if these embankments are solid, if it's made of, like, the kind of material that they are supposed to be made of. I mean, they're spending about, like, uh, you know 25 million rupees. That is the ADB loan, I think, or it could be more also. I don't have the figure at my in my hand right now, but
Millions
it's
of dollars. It's in the
certainly a
millions of
substantial, yeah, it's
dollars.
substantial portion of money that is being spent in construction of embankments. And it's not just one project, there are three projects. And in these three areas, Dibrugarh town, if you see, Dibrugarh town also had a similar, Dibrugarh town also had a similar embankment construction, and that town also experienced similar floods. Kaziranga, as you can see, it's just getting waves and waves of floods every year. On
Right.
top of that, you have hydropower plants around it, so they keep releasing a lot of water, I mean, without even warning. So these are things that we should talk about floods during the dry season, when these matters can be fixed, rather than
It's too late.
worrying about
Monsters
them.
are too
uh,
late. I agree with you. So,
yeah.
a group of journalists, including Anupam, got together and produced this documentary. It's called Mati, and they have released it. And they want to talk about why people, government, need to start very early on. Journalists need to start early on and keep making noises about the poor quality of construction that's taking place. It's not going to help stop the floods. Everybody knows till what height the water goes up every year. So if you are early on, you begin working towards it, you'll possibly land up saving lives. You possibly, land up not destroying homes and, displacing people. So I think, Anupam, you make a very good point. Unfortunately, we're out of time today. You've come very late into the show. We wanted you to come in early, but thank you for joining us for the show. Now I'm going to go to Chandrani for closing statements, and then I'm going to go to Pranav, who's sitting in a village in Kaziranga. Chandrani, closing statements from you.
So I want to say about the inclusiveness of Northeast, and also the way the editors look at uh, uh, at us, like regarding Northeast, the stories which we did try to tell them. Like if you want to do a flood related stories 3-4 months back, then the editor says no, because flood hasn't ever arrived, and why the necessity of doing it right now. So there is something like I have like on in my heart about, like, when I go for reporting, on ground reporting, so there are a lot of problems we face. So from my side, I would say that the government should come up. Also, the journalist will at least, like, they should fight with their editors, in fact, to do good stories regarding flood. And also the solution, like I would I would like to bring on solution journalism in it, like suggestions, solutions, and comparative journalism with how flood can be fought together. So I think
Sure.
this is something which I'd like to say.
Sure. Yeah, Chandrani used to work for me and she used to fight with me a lot. So I can assure you she fights as a journalist. All right, Pranav, please, on your closing statements from the village, please tell us, what would you like to see happen on the ground from the state of Assam, including the government of India? We're having trouble with Pranav's audio. If we can open up the audio.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes, I
hello.
can hear
Am I
you. Go
audible?
ahead, Pranav. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And the first thing that we need, I guess, the people of Assam need is this: the problem of floods. I mean, the issue of floods needs to be recognized by the Indian government as a national problem. And secondly, the Assam government also needs to work towards it, which we don't see. We seriously see a lack of political will among the representatives from Assam. Right now, it's the BJP government, and we see they are interested in putting up spectacles more than addressing the real issue. At this point of time, when floods is ravaging the whole state, we have our chief minister who is talking about competing with China on building a tunnel through Brahmaputra, which is close to Kaziranga, which in itself should be disastrous because Kaziranga National Park is right here. And so the government needs to focus more on addressing the issues, portraying the voices of the people, this perennial problem that we are kept in. I mean, we say we are kept in because as communities who have evolved here, we know the techniques to handle the floods and we are resilient enough to deal with it. But the problem is with the design, the whole development discourse and the nationalist discourse that the government or the dominant political parties are following. So the
Very good
people
point.
needs
Very
to
good,
be,
Pranav.
yeah,
Pranav,
the
it's a very good
people
point.
needs to be taken into contention,
Sure, sure,
and
sure.
without people's participation I don't think like we can come up with any solution, because natural calamities have proven time and again that it's beyond the reach of a country like India to address them immediately. So we should depend more on the people and their resiliency and think about.
All right. I think Pranav has made his point very clearly. He's sitting on the ground in a small village and he's telling us that stop, navel gazing. You, as the government, are responsible for all of India, the Northeast being no different. I think all our panelists today, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and you made it very, very clear that this is not a time to navel gaze. It's a time to act. It's a time to be more inclusive. And it's not going to happen if you're constantly locked in political battles. You need to be continuing the path of development, and corruption needs to drop and drop dramatically. Thank you guys for joining us for the show. Today, our focus was the northeast of India and the floods which are impacting it, and how the national media of the country is literally ignoring it. Thanks for joining us.